Dustin Young, Lone Roamer, and today we're going to compare a 2021 Specialized StumpJumper to a 2021 Norco Optic. These are two super fun bikes. This was a really cool comparison. I mean, I've ridden these things back to back. I had them both for a good amount of time. I ended up with the Optic twice. I got to have a second couple of days with it because I just wanted to make sure some things that I felt that I agreed with. So that was pretty cool. I want to thank the Specialized rep and the Norco rep both for lending me the bikes so that I could do this video. Super awesome, and I appreciate getting the opportunity to do this. So I think you can't talk about these two bikes in a comparison unless you talk about what their intended purpose is based on their design. And I will tell you their intended purpose is to be a short travel or just a trail bike with two very different philosophies going into it, in my opinion. Let's start with the Specialized StumpJumper. It's a trail bike, and their intended purpose is efficiency in climbing with the ability to still descend pretty well. You can see it in the lightweight tires, the DPS cross-country style rear shock, the 65-degree head tube angle, the 76.5-degree UC tube angle, and the attempt at lightweight parts to sort of keep the bike lighter, the elimination of the horse link to a more cross-country style, or what they run on the Epic and have for quite a while, and that movement towards a bike that's a lot more efficient and a better climber, and really intended for people who are pushing hard to get up. Now, the other side of that is the Norco Optic, which is a horse-link style rear end, so you can have a little more of an active rear end. A super deluxe downhill rear shock from RockShox. So there's that. That's that's a big difference. And a bike overall that is a little slacker, half a degree in the front, half a degree in the C tube. So you go 65.5, 65.5, or 76. So you're going to be a little more slack everywhere. And chainstay length versus center of crank to front fork length, and overall wheelbase is different all the way around. The StumpJumper still runs a longer rear chainstay. The Optic runs a very short rear chainstay at 16 7/8. The Optic, let me look here, is 30 5/8 center of crank to the front center axle, whereas it's only 30 1/4 on the StumpJumper. So you're looking at some pretty good differences there. And they're both neutral, but neither one is truly forward geometry. They're both pretty neutral. The Optic is neutral to forward. The StumpJumper is neutral and will let you be off the back a little bit. So pretty different intended purposes. The Optic, while pretty efficient for the design and a decent climber, comes with enduro tires, whereas again, the StumpJumper comes with what I would consider a pretty light trail tire. I think that's Specialized. They know their buyers. They're incredible at figuring this stuff out. You cannot knock Specialized for the things they do. Matter of fact, there's a lot of bikes that don't exist without them. You've heard me say that. They pioneered a lot of things. But since a lot of people buy bikes with the strategy of walking in, taking the bike and going, oh, that's a good bike. It's a weight test system. It doesn't say anything about performance, but Specialized knows that, so they build a bike to that quite a bit. Not always, but quite a bit. And Norco apparently doesn't think that's relevant and definitely didn't do that and put full-on enduro tires on it, Vittoria tires. Translated from Italian, they mean these are hammer and sledgehammer. That's the names of the tires translated into English. And on the trail, you can feel that difference. Downhill, the tires are just way better than the Specialized tires. The experience was better. The way they rode and felt and sort of tracked and all of that was better. Uphill, the Specialized tires were better. They rolled better, they climbed faster. In the long rollers, like if you're rolling like trails that kind of have undulation and a lot of swoopy berms and you go up and then you go down, the Specialized tires are gonna be faster so long as there are no technical challenges. Let's say you come into a long section of rock at high speed where you're gonna turn. The Optic will crush the StumpJumper soul in that situation. It is built to handle that. It is everything they did was designed to be fast when the going gets tough. Flip side, if you're climbing a fairly technical climb and you've got to work your way up the StumpJumper, well, it starts to really shine. It's light, it's efficient, it's designed to bounce through that stuff, and if you can lay the hammer down, it's gonna terrorize all the way to the top. So this is where we talk a little about the difference of the bikes. Now let me run down some numbers to give you some idea here. Their reach is 5mm different. They're extremely similar. And my version of effective reach, which is a saddle to bar measurement where my saddle height is always 27.5 inches, and my bar's set at 50 mil using the same bar, stem at 50 mil using the same bars all the time. They're within 1/4 inch of each other. The Specialized actually is a little bit longer, which surprised me to see because it doesn't feel longer. They feel pretty identical actually, and this is where I think they're both designed around that neutral rider stance. But the big difference is wheelbase, where you are looking at 47 and 5/16 versus 47.5. So you get to see it, even though it's 5 mil shorter travel bike in the Optic, it's a little slacker, which is probably where the length comes from, and they make the bike a little longer. And so it's oriented towards when a trail starts to point downhill and you want to rail berms and you want to hit the G's, you want to plow the jumps, it really comes alive. The bike, you start to feel that composure. It's not twitchy, it's really stable. There's no cross-country behavior, okay? Now, there's a couple of different sections that I rode really hard that I wanted to see what would happen. And so there's this section of trail, it's full of like bigger rocks and baby heads, and you've got to just hit it and go. Anything else and you just lose so much momentum. And as the StumpJumper came in, it went up the rocks. It got bounced a lot because that suspension was really firm, set up exactly how it's supposed to be set up per all the instructions, all my rebound, everything. It actually rode really good. So the bike wasn't off in setup. It's the nature of the firmness of the chassis and the design of the bike, and it just sort of up the trail it went, and then it came down. Stayed in the trail, had a good time, super great. Same thing, I come in, plowing as hard as I can on the Optic, smash into it, and I stay right down my line and track. I'm turning in rocks, I'm not getting bounced around, and the bike feels like it's handling that situation a lot better. So that's the best example I can give of how the bikes felt different. Now, they're similarly weighted, so a Norco Optic C2 that comes with like all SRAM GX weighs about the same as the StumpJumper I had in a carbon. They're not base, but next up carbon bike. They weighed very similar. Some of the big differences: Specialized swap box is super cool. Specialized internal cable routing is definitely better. It was an all carbon bike with aluminum wheels. I think you could really fix that bike with wheels. Would make a big difference because the Specialized frame had a lot of flex. So if you went to a little stiffer wheel, you could have eliminated some of that trail wandering that I experienced, and a little beefier tire, but all those things are gonna start to add some weight at some point, so depending on what you're comfortable with weight-wise. The Optic, on the other hand, has an aluminum rear end, not the world's greatest internal cable routing system. It does work, it is a little bit annoying to do. It still works, you can do it just fine. I've changed the cables out on them, all good. In my opinion, the C1 build is actually a better build, so less funny. I think it's a little better build for the price point. So if you're looking at those, you know, something to think about. the build on the C1 actually is a pretty sweet build for a $4,000 bike. It's really cool, actually. You're also looking at the difference between Fox suspension and RockShox suspension, and you're looking at Fox suspension where the front is actually very true. They did a good job with the 34 and the grip damper, and so the front is very trail oriented, almost as if to sort of help compensate for the cross-country-ness of the rear end. And I think that's what Specialized might have been after there. From a rider, from riding it, that's what it felt like. They're trying to use the front end to compensate for the back getting kicked around. Much like you might try to long fork a hardtail because the back's gonna scoot around and you want that front to be as stable as possible. The Optic is a super deluxe in the rear plus a pike in the front. It is very trail oriented suspension. It rides like a trail bike. It's plush like a trail bike. It chews up small bump, brake bump, rocks everything like a trail bike. It just feels like a different bike in that arena. Yeah, and I gave you the weight. They need to run similar PSI in the rear shocks. I was 20 PSI less is all. That is probably due to the similar rear end design, especially of the previous StumpJumper, and just the leverage ratio of the rear end. What they're trying to get out, what kind of behavior they're trying to get out. Another big difference was bottom bracket height. So 12 3/4 versus 13 1/4. A 1/2 inch taller bottom bracket on the Optic actually makes a lot of sense, with the intended purpose being charge rock gardens, ride it like a mini enduro bike downhill, push it to its very limits, and it came with the suspension to do it and the tires to do it. I think with the StumpJumper, they want you to feel down in the bike a little more because it is a little bit more of a firmer platform. They know you're not going to be pushing down into the bottom part of the travel all the time, and the buyer tends to be, I think, in my opinion, the average buyer tends to be somebody who's looking for a trail bike that's going to ride some technical stuff, a lot of smoother trail, so they don't need to worry about the bottom bracket being up and catching rocks all the time and things like that. Totally personal opinion on the design, sort of my thoughts. 125 mil in the rear, 140 in the front for the Optic, 130 in the rear, 140 in the front for the StumpJumper. This is a really sweet spot for a ton of riding. Again, I go back, you get into, I got a big bike and I got a really short bike. I'll ride this on trails, but when I have a trail bike, I have so much more fun on the same trails because I'm able to do things that this bike, you don't notice them on this bike, and/or it's just a bigger, heavier bike. And on this bike, it starts to get really agitated when you push it way too far and start to get into what should be short travel trail bike range when it's really a cross country bike. So this category of bike is spectacular. If you're going to be one bike in it, it is the way to go. I actually really want a bike in this travel range. And that brings me to, which bike would I choose of these two tomorrow if I were going to go buy one? It's the Norco Optic for me. I love to climb. I don't mind climbing being punishing. I don't care about, I'll go climb big climbs, perfectly good with it. But once I point downhill, I want the bike to flip on party mode and be ready to go. And while the Specialized is super fun, and again, I know some people that go really dang fast on those bikes, right? The rider matters a lot, not the bike. But if you're looking for one that just, if you're an intermediate rider and you're trying to progress your speed downhill and you don't mind a little bit more work climbing and you want something that was set up for like hitting the jumps and riding the bigger berms and really being pushed in the rock gardens, then for you, it's the Norco Optic. Now, if you want to ride some tech and rough, but you're gonna climb a lot and you're gonna be trail riding lots of places that aren't really technical, just medium technical, the StumpJumper is gonna be overall time the faster bike. It's probably gonna fit you really well. And then the other thing is know your riding style. If you like to hang back on the bike or you like to be center or a little back, the StumpJumper is the better bike for you. They designed it around it. It'll stay pretty composed in that situation and you won't start to feel like the front end's gonna get pretty wandery on you. The Optic, it'll let you sit real centered. You can hang off a little, but it really, if you get a little bit centered and you just drop down naturally and let that body weight sit forward, man, that bike just responds and really comes alive. So those things are sort of the big differences between the two bikes. Now, I've had several friends go out and demo these bikes. Most have ended up, so some people want a StumpJumper when they're done. One in particular that turned out to be his hands down. He's a climber, he loves to climb, he loved that bike. And hard charging downhill, he likes to ride downhill, he likes to ride fast, but he's not a risk taker. That StumpJumper fit him like a charm. Others, they get out there, they get on the Optic, and they like to turn, and they like to slide, and they like to push, and they've walked away with the Optic. The other thing is the Ride Align system from Norco. If you haven't used it, go out, find a demo, if you're looking for an Optic to demo, reach out to me. I'll do my best to find you one somewhere. So just make a comment, and I'll do everything I can to help you find a demo. Go out, try these bikes. They're great bikes. And see what you get out of it, because the people who've demoed it often have said, wow, I can't believe how hard I could push that bike, the rocks and the rolls, and how it behaved for the travel it had. And so it's turned out there's several people have ended up on that particular bike. And it is the bike I would end up on based on my rider style. I really appreciate you guys watching this video today. I want to give a quick shout out to MTB NorCal. Go out and get yourself, go to Hand Up Gloves and get yourself these MTB NorCal gloves. If you want to support the trails in Northern California, if you ride here a lot, I think this is a great thing to do. They just had a really cool event and they donated a bunch of money to Bonk and to Fat Track. And this group is really working hard to make sure our trails are better and maintained, and advocacy and access and all the cool stuff. I'm not a member of them. I just think they're a really cool group. I bought the gloves. 10% of the proceeds from every purchase is money that goes to them. So go out, support, wherever you are, support your local mountain bike clubs. They are there. If they're good and they're working hard for you, you'll know it because they're fighting for trail access and they're making sure you have cool stuff to ride, and they're doing volunteer days and trail maintenance and all the awesome stuff. So support whoever is doing that. I really like these guys. I just wanted to give them a shout out on here. I thought the stuff they've done has been really cool to watch, and I think it's pretty rad, everything they're working on in the community. So yeah, and this is Dustin Young, Lone Roamer. If you like this video, please hit like, subscribe to my channel. It's fun. It's a hobby of mine, and I'm doing everything I can to grow this bad boy and have some real fun with everybody. So hope you're having an awesome day, and I hope to see you out on the trails.